Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Thursdays wherever you may be across this great country or this great world. And if you are in the state of Mississippi, as some of you are, as you either watch or listen to this, my goodness, are you about to have a fun year or two as long as this goes on. Lane Kiffin hired by Ole Miss. As a result, he had soaked up all of the oxygen in the state of Mississippi, all of the enthusiasm for that hire. And I believe that was a big reason why Joe Moorhead was fired. Not just that he was not really that liked there, but also that he paled in comparison in the enthusiasm gap between what Ole Miss was doing and what was going on with Mississippi State. And now Mississippi State punches back in a big way. It was the peace celebration that might have led to the two greatest coaching hires ever made in the state of Mississippi's history, with Lane Kiffin being now followed by Mike Leach. Officially, the Pirate is leaving the Palouse, leaving Washington State to come down and be a new head coach for Mississippi State. If you are a Bulldog, you have to be thrilled about this. If you are an Ole Miss fan, your early advantage has now been forestalled at least a bit. I love this hire. I have said it for a while. Mike Leach has won at a high level at Texas Tech. He's won at a high level at Washington State. He will win at a high level at Mississippi State for that program. Now, I'm not saying necessarily he's going to do any better than Dan Mullen did, but Dan Mullen was about as good as Mississippi State, I think, can do as a hire. I think that they will be exciting. I think that they will be fun. I think that Leach will be a great representative for the Mississippi State football program. I think his quirky nature will cut through a lot of noise. And frankly, I think he'll do very, very well at Mississippi State. There's a yin and a yang component to Mike Leach's Pirate dynamic compared to Lane Kiffin's just all-in dynamic. And I think this is going to make the Egg Bowl one of the best rivalries in all of sports as long as both these guys are there. Now, if you're not familiar with the Egg Bowl is already a fantastic rivalry. But this is one of those situations where sometimes people who are from the state understand better how big of a rivalry it is than people who may not have traveled in to watch it. This is a down and dirty rivalry that these two schools hate each other. I mean, just despise each other. And this is going to take it to the next level. I believe it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. Now, I like this hire. Just breaking down the Mike Leach edition in general, he's proven that he can win in two football backwaters. He's coached in the SEC before. For people who don't realize that he was the offensive coordinator at Kentucky, you can go listen to a long-form interview with him on my Wins and Losses podcast. He was extraordinary. And he talked a lot about in that interview how much he enjoyed living in the Southeast, where football was basically a mindset. Remember, he was in Valdosta before that. In fact, I need to send out the link to that, but you can go search it out on iTunes. If you are a Mississippi State fan or you're just curious and you don't know much about Mike Leach, if you type in Clay Travis Wins and Losses, you can scroll through. There are a lot of good ones. Colin Cowherd, Kirk Herbstreit, Paul Feinbaum, Eddie George just went up today, and it's pretty outstanding as well. But it's a great listen to get into sort of Mike Leach's universe and Mike Leach's world. And so I think this is a fantastic hire for Mississippi State. They were going to get Judge, evidently, but then he gets hired by the Giants and evidently had a phenomenal press conference today. Mike Leach is going to be introduced tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern. I think he will win that press conference. And the SEC, just think about the SEC West now. You have national championship winning coach in Nick Saban and also in Jimbo Fisher. By Monday around 10:30 or 11 o'clock Central, you may have a national championship winning coach in Coach O at LSU. You have Gus Malzahn, who has played for a national championship and nearly won one against Florida State. You have Lane Kiffin, who has really won at a pretty high level and recruited at a pretty high level. and you have Mike Leach, who somebody can look this up. I think Mike Leach, didn't he almost have Texas Tech number 1 in the country for like a week or two back in the day when he went and beat Texas? I know that Texas was number 1 in the country, but I think he took Texas Tech to number 1 in the country back in like October a decade ago or so. So you're talking about him who has been there as well with a, there you go, yeah, close to it anyway, to being number 1 overall in the Crabtree years, exactly. He had done the unbelievable at Texas Tech. I think Cliff Kingsbury's a pretty good coach. He wasn't able to have anywhere near the success that Mike Leach did. And then you got Arkansas with Pittman, who hasn't done anything. So the SEC West is on fire right now. And if you are a SEC football fan or you are a college football fan at all, Mike Leach in Mississippi State down in Stark Vegas is going to be phenomenal. Somebody said, will he be able to recruit well enough? I mean, he's going to be able to recruit a lot better at Mississippi State than he was at Washington State or Texas Tech. Remember, this is a guy who's used to having inferior players. What I was going to say on my podcast with me, he said, look, there's 2 kinds of schools. There's schools who send out invitations, and there's schools who recruit. I've always been at schools who had to recruit. So I think if anything, he will have an easier job getting good players at Mississippi State than certainly he did all the way up at Washington State and even at Texas Tech. I think the overall quality of his player will increase substantially. There's a lot more good college football players within, a 3 or 4 hour drive of Starkville than there are within a 3 or 4 hour drive of either Texas Tech or of Washington State. So I think he will do pretty well. I don't think it will be a major issue going forward to try and figure out exactly how he will do at Mississippi State. To me, this isn't remotely difficult, all right? So this to me is really, really good. A great hire for Mississippi State, good hire for the SEC. If you're a college football fan, this is pretty outstanding. All right, and that's not even maybe the craziest story that's going on right now in the SEC. This is wild. This is absolutely insane. So, Cade Mays is a 5-star offensive lineman who is from Knoxville. His dad played for Phil Fulmer back in the early 90s. His younger brother has committed to Tennessee. And he is a 5-star guy who went down to Georgia because he wasn't happy with the Butch Jones situation. He wasn't comfortable with the status of the Tennessee program. So he decided that he was going to commit to Georgia. He played for 2 years. He was the starting left tackle for Georgia in the Sugar Bowl most recently. He would have been a starter on their offensive line. He suddenly bailed. He is now enrolled at the University of Tennessee, this 5-star offensive lineman. I'm reading now from the initial report that had this story, Mark Schleybaugh at ESPN. Mays' parents sued the University of Georgia System Board of Regents, the Georgia Athletic Association, and others after Kevin Mays' right pinky finger was amputated because an accident involving a folding chair at the Bulldog Gala in December 2017. According to the complaint, which is, again, he is suing the University of Georgia because he lost his finger. Listen to this. Plaintiff Kevin Mays' right pinky finger was partially amputated as the subject folding chair wedged against the column. His severed finger shot across the floor. Georgia offensive line coach Sam Pittman, who is now the head coach at Arkansas, picked up plaintiff Kevin Mays' severed finger from the floor, and it was put on ice. My God. Just when you think stories can't get any crazier in the SEC, we have got a 5-star offensive tackle, future first-round pick, who is now trying to get immediately eligible to play football moving from Georgia to Tennessee because his dad's finger got amputated and he's suing the university. That is going to be part of the grounds for why he should be immediately eligible. This is an unbelievable story. According to people that I have talked to, they expect for Cade Mays to be eligible. This is Phil Fulmer getting the Vols back rolling again. This offensive line now, as if that were not enough news, he's enrolled at Tennessee. The expectation is that he is going to be starting this fall for Tennessee, a 5-star addition. As if that weren't enough, Trey Smith, who is also projected to potentially be a first-round pick if his health can remain in good standing, announced today that he's not going to go pro, and so he is going to come back. So Tennessee potentially could be starting five stars almost, depending on where you look at the rankings and kind of move around because everybody's got different rankings. An unbelievable talent on offensive line for Tennessee coming back next year. The Vols could have five stars starting on offensive line. Now, this is a big deal because Fulmer is an old offensive line coach, and he went and hired Jeremy Pruitt with the idea being that Tennessee was going to build their team from the lines out. In other words, they were going to develop big hosses on the offensive and defensive lines like old school Tennessee used to be, frankly, like Alabama and Georgia have been built, building out from the offensive and defensive lines. And Tennessee's offensive line is 100%, if they can stay healthy, rebuilt for this coming season. So as Georgia is losing people left and right, Tennessee is rising up, and the Vols are going to be pretty good next year. I think there's a decent chance that Tennessee is going to be top 25 next year in the preseason polls if people are paying attention to the overall talent level that is coming into Knoxville. You still don't know exactly what's going to happen at quarterback. How good is Jarrett Garantano going to be? Because he's been wildly inaccurate over time. But Tennessee is going to be really good again, I think, in 2020, this year, come September. Now, the schedule's brutal. You go on the road against Oklahoma. You got Florida. You got Georgia. You got Alabama like usual. But they're also bringing in a potential 5-star quarterback in Harrison Bailey who could be really, really good. And again, Jarrett Garantano is returning, who's had a ton of experience. And at times he's been absolutely fantastic. Other times he's been difficult to watch. So Tennessee is close to being back. If Cade Mays is eligible, now that Trey Smith is returning, Tennessee is back to 8 or 9 win caliber talent with the possibility that the ceiling could even be a little bit higher. It didn't take that long for Jeremy Pruitt to get Tennessee back in fighting shape. And I just said this. I've been on this for a while. I think a lot of people have missed it. Butch Jones left Tennessee in such rough position that the first 16 SEC games Jeremy Pruitt coached, he was an underdog in 15 of them. And he went 7-9 overall in those 16 games. 3-5 in his first year. 2-6 in his first year. 5-3 in his second year. What is Jeremy Pruitt going to be capable of if he actually gets somewhat similar talent to the teams that he's going up against in the next couple of years? I'm cautiously optimistic that he and Jim Chaney can do some good things, especially if this Harrison Bailey kid turns out to be a good quarterback. You never know, but he's a 5-star caliber quarterback. Or if Jarrett Garantano can ever put everything in order in place. I mean, the guy threw for 400 yards against Missouri. Guy won the game against Kentucky in the second half. If he could consistently play at a high level, if Jim Chaney could get him fixed, Tennessee's an SEC East contender beyond a shadow of a doubt next year. Florida's going to be very good. I think they have to be the favorite. Georgia will be the second best. I think the third best team will be Tennessee pretty consistently in the SEC East, with Tennessee having a chance to actually make a run above that. All right, this story is crazy to me. I don't know why, and thankfully, some of these stories, like I don't know how much attention to give to them, but John Beilein is under fire for evidently saying that his team played like thugs. Now, he said he meant to say slugs, but I don't understand this obsession with being perpetually offended that NBA players have. You are making millions of dollars a year to play basketball. If somebody wants to say that you played like slugs or like thugs, this reminds me of LeBron James saying, oh, it was racist of Phil Jackson to use the word posse. We have got to stop the creep of offensive words in this country, all right? They are words. If you don't like the way that you are described, suck it up and deal with it, all right? I have seen the word thug used to describe all sorts of people, right? Regularly, people say, oh, they play a thuggish brand of basketball. They foul a lot. They hit hard. Whatever else you want to say. This is crazy to me that this somehow turns into a story as if you have to apologize and get on bended knees and kiss everybody. This is absurd. This is utterly absurd. And this is what I talk about when I am talking about the NBA losing the middle part of America, of their audience. White, black, Asian, Hispanic. There are a lot of people out there that roll their eyes when they hear this, okay? And the example, the metaphor that I used is the NBA can't get any softer. And every time you think the NBA can't get any more ridiculous, a story like this comes out. And people lose their minds. And you sit back and you say, dude, this is not the number one story in America, okay? This is not a huge issue. John Beilein has coached players in college and pros for 40 years in basketball. If he was some crazy, huge racist, don't you think it would have come out before now? This is just, again, so soft. Like the idea, we have created a society that is convinced that words harm people, right? And that they have to police what people say. And what I liked about Ricky Gervais's Golden Globes talk, his monologue, was there's starting to be a coalition of people who are embracing the DBAP lifestyle. And I was on the front edges of this, and I have been for a long time. Let's focus on actions, not on words. I think the acceleration of social media and the extent to which it's been driving stories over the last 6 or 7 years has led to people covering tweets and covering quotes as if they are real news stories and as if they are actions. They are not. There is a difference between words and actions. By and large, penalize actions. Be outraged by actions. Things that physically are done that hurt other people. Do not be offended or upset or triggered or perpetually offended by the choice of words, all right? And I think there's a lot of comedians out there of all different racial backgrounds. Dave Chappelle's most recent comedy special was fantastic talking about it. I think that Ricky Gervais's speech as well. We got to get out of this universe where people curl up in the fetal position and are upset over words, especially when they aren't in any way offensive words. I don't know why anybody feels the need to be a perpetual victim, except that we have enabled this behavior in the way that our media and our social media reacts to what should be non-stories. All right, final comment here. I told you yesterday that Iran was the Michigan of the international community. I said they talk a big game, but every time they try to actually do something, you realize that they're not ready for prime time. They don't want this smoke. They aren't an actual, real life, legitimate, major presence on the international stage. And as a result, as if I needed any further evidence of that, Iran tried to send a bunch of missiles at the United States to send a message after we killed Soleimani. And as part of their attempt to defend themselves, it appears they shot down a passenger jet accidentally and killed nearly 180 people. In other words, this country's air defense system is so incompetent that they accidentally shot down a passenger jet that was flying out of Tehran and headed, I believe, to the Ukraine. Now, I don't know who in the world is flying from Tehran to the Ukraine. That sounds like one of the worst flights you could possibly be on. If you told me, hey, Clay, you have to go between this city and that city, and my choices were you're going from Tehran to the Ukraine, I'd be like, that is the worst flight path ever created in the history of mankind. I mean, I don't know why you would get on that flight. I don't know why you'd be trying to go to either place. But Iran is so incompetent in terms of being able to even defend their country that they shot down a passenger jet. I feel awful for the people who were on that plane, but that is how incompetent Tehran is. This idea that the people in Iran were going to be able to step to the United States at all was laughably absurd, and anyone who was arguing that was an imbecile. There are a lot of people on social media who want to perpetually convince you that World War III is coming, that the world is a catastrophic place, that everything out there in the global community is awful. The truth of the matter is this: it ain't. Things get better every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year in the world. And this ultimately is what has triggered left-wingers so much during the Donald Trump administration. It's that for all of their talk about how if Donald Trump got elected, the world would come undone, everything has actually gotten better. The stock market has hit new highs. Unemployment has hit historic lows. Average wages for real families in America are all up. We haven't had any major international conflict that has led to substantial death. Crime in general is down. Everything is better since Donald Trump got elected president. And that is why if he would just shut up and behave for a year and just run the country, he's going to get reelected. If he would tweet less and just say, look at my record, everything is fine. And also, all of this idea that everything was going to be a disaster if he got elected has been proven to be untrue. Time after time we've heard, oh, this is the event that's going to spell the doom, the demise, the deluge of disaster that's going to befall the United States, and it hasn't happened. And so all he has to do is tell the story of what has happened, which is almost 100% positivity in this country overall in the 3 years that he's been president so far. And that ultimately is what drives Democrats the most insane, because all of their doom and gloom has not come to pass. Everything is perpetually the straw that's going to completely collapse and send everything into an uproar, into a tailspin, and it doesn't happen. I think the decision to take out Soleimani, which evidently came at the behest of the CIA, was a good one. I think it's made us safer. I think it's made the world safer, and I think it's made the country better. And that ultimately is what the president's job is. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. We'll be back tomorrow. I'll be live on Lock It In, 3:30 Eastern, 4:30 Eastern, only a 30-minute show today because we got to tape a bunch of stuff for local shows. We're doing local shows now all over the country, Pennsylvania, New York, other local Fox affiliates. You can now see Lock It In on your main Fox station. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. My name is Clay Travis. Watch out. Don't get your fingers amputated, but if you do, make sure you have a 5-star son and you can use it as part of the justification for why you can play for a new team next year. I'll see y'all. I'm out. Love you. Thank you, Facebook.